Afghanistan, a country racked by seemingly interminable war. Here, there are always casualties. In the hospitals, they fight their own daily battle against injury and disease, armed with the most basic of facilities. On the outskirts of the capital, Kabul, lies a refugee camp for around 1,000 Afghan families displaced by war and poverty. Today, they have a visitor, a man who knows how it is to live in the most basic of conditions.
It's very sad to see this. It brings all my memories back.
درستك دکتر شد. درست است ما براتون چیز میکنم اما CT scanner شما خواهی باز.
In his kitchen in Chester, Dr. Waheed Aryan is taking yet another call from Afghanistan. A hospital in Kabul has a problem and needs expert help. Most hospitals there have his number on speed dial. Over the past 2 years, he's established a network of around 100 volunteer doctors and consultants in the West who give free advice to hospitals in war zones. It's all done by text, WhatsApp, Skype and email. This is telemedicine at its simplest and most effective.
They don't have the up-to-date technologies, they don't have the cutting-edge expertise, they don't have advanced evidence-based medicine. So they need any expertise or any advice that's more world-class here, and that's very useful for them, just to make sure that the child is well, the child is stable. And they send us the cases immediately on the phone, and our specialists then look at those cases up and then give them advice. Hi.
Hi.
What do we have here? What images?
For the last 3 years, Dr. Aryan has been based at a hospital in Liverpool, but his life is still dominated by Afghanistan. Born in Kabul 34 years ago, he grew up knowing only war. The Soviet-Afghan conflict of the 1980s made him a child refugee. The ensuing civil war of the 1990s shaped his destiny. His parents sent him to England to give him a chance of a future. They could never have imagined how he'd seize that opportunity and create new hope for those casualties of war in his homeland and beyond.
I'd seen so much suffering in my childhood, and that suffering was still very vivid in my memory. And I wanted to see if I could help in any way alleviate that suffering from many people that were in a similar position to mine as a child. And when I went back to Afghanistan, I kept making regular trips. I could see that people were still suffering. And I thought I would have to make a difference, and along with other colleagues, go and try to do as much as we can.
Waheed and his wife Davina have lived in Chester since 2014. Their son Zain was born 2 years later. Waheed is a specialist registrar in radiology based at Aintree University Hospital. But just 2 years from qualifying as a consultant, he's taken a career break to develop his new project, Aryan Teleheal.
He had spoken obviously to me before he'd made that decision to concentrate on the charity. But I honestly believe that if you've got a passion and you've got an idea, you must fulfill it. Otherwise you may have regrets in later life. And the fact that his passion and his idea was to save millions of lives, especially in poorer countries that don't have such a great facility that we have in the NHS. And because the idea was so brilliant, it was one of those risks that you can not take. So, yes, I just said go for it.
But with the charity still in its infancy, he doesn't have funding to pay himself a salary.
So I rely on working Friday, Saturday and Sundays in emergency departments as a senior emergency doctor. And that actually provides me the expenses to be able to support my family, to be able to support myself, as well as to cater for all the trips that I do. I'm off to Kabul, Afghanistan from Manchester Airport, this time on the invitation of the Minister of Public Health, in order to review our work of telemedicine with existing hospitals and to plan the expansion of telemedicine throughout Afghanistan in the near future. And I'm very happy that I'll be able to see my family again tomorrow.
When Waheed was born in 1983, the Soviet-Afghan War was already in its 4th year. By the time he was 5, his family decided to escape to Pakistan. They subsequently spent 3 years in a refugee camp near Peshawar. Today, back at the family home in Kabul, Waheed and his parents reminisce about their terrifying journey on foot and on donkeys through the mountains near the Khyber Pass. Most frightening of all, the moment when they were almost killed by a Russian helicopter gunship.
We thought that we would all be killed, and this would be our last breath. All I was thinking was finding a way to save you. The plane fired a rocket, which destroyed the wall of the house where we were hiding, and then it left. I told you, son, if I'm killed, you go back to Kabul. Do not go anywhere else.
On most trips home, Waheed takes clothes to distribute at the refugee camp in Kabul. The memories of his childhood years in Pakistan are always with him.
The living conditions in the refugee camp, they were not humane. As a family of 10, we were living in one muddy room and with just one carpet, few pillows, no mattresses. The temperatures would rise up to 45 degrees and we suffered from malaria several times, like many other refugees in that camp. Then I contracted tuberculosis and that lasted for about 2 years. I was being treated by one of the doctors in the refugee camp. And that's when I became inspired to become a doctor, so that I could help myself, my family, and many other people like myself who were suffering.
After 3 years in the camp, the family returned to Kabul. The Russians had gone, but civil war now raged through the country.
This is the Kuala Pushta area, and that's where I used to live between the age of 8 and 15. All this area used to be all flat and destroyed by the war. We had to move from our house to Khairkhana, near the mountains over there. And from there we had to move to Kote Sangi, behind the mountains over there, because of the war. And then we had to move from there all the way to the other side of Kabul, to Kartinau, just to hide from the shellings and the bombings that were happening on a daily basis.
Eventually, his parents would take the decision to send him abroad, and his life would never be the same again. But in 2017, he no longer runs from war, he confronts it. And today in Afghanistan, there's war on 2 fronts. The Taliban never went away, but now the situation is further complicated by new insurgents.
More than 30 people have been killed and dozens wounded in an attack by so-called Islamic State militants at a hospital in the Afghan capital, Kabul. Local officials say the 3 gunmen were dressed as doctors.
Waheed was actually in this hospital just 24 hours before the ISIS attack. His younger brother, a junior doctor, was moments from death.
Everybody was running to save their lives, and we couldn't find a way to out, and we find a door. We smashed the door, and after that we all was running. Unfortunately, I lost my 2 friends. Those were my class fellows, and I lost those friends in hospital.
We were all at the house waiting to hear the bad news. My parents, they were distraught. My mother was crying non-stop. We were in a shock situation, just waiting near the phone, complete shock and utter shock, how something like that unexpectedly could happen any moment, and that's why it's so dangerous.
The attack was a stark reminder of what hospitals in Afghanistan are up against. But it's not just the direct results of terror attacks that need attention. With poor sanitation, scarce resources and a low standard of medical training, there are numerous problems which just don't occur in the developed world. On Waheed's latest trip, he visits a number of hospitals to check on the progress of his telemedicine scheme and inevitably encounters new cases.
ولی گفتن که این داخلش چیز نیه، دیم نیه، بیرونه، زیاد مشکلای داره، ما هیچ چی تشخیص کردن نمیتونیم.
و شما چقدر وقت هستین مریض هستین؟ خب شکمتون زیاد درد داره. و چیز است در کدام ولایت هستین شما؟ و در چیز که بود دکتر صاحب اونجا امرایتون کمک کردن در هرات؟ خب یک هفته میشه شما می‌آمدید. خب بسیار خوب. دکتر صاحبان هم خدا زیاد زحمت زیاد کشیدن، کوشش زیاد کردن و بعد از این ان شاء الله ما کیستون همین چیز تکلیفتون که هست که ما امرای دکتر صاحب خارجی مطرح میکنیم و سرش صحبت میکنیم. خوش هستین؟ خب لطف کردید. شفای عاجل براتون میخوایم. خوش شدم از اینکه امرایتون ملاقات کردیم. تشکر از شما هم. خدا حافظ. تشکر. خدا باشه.
Waheed's telemedicine scheme is deliberately non-political and non-religious. And when the unreliable Afghan telephone system allows, it gets results.
Although all hospitals receive complicated cases, almost all maternity hospitals have emergencies. 2 of our cases in particular were covered very well, and we received very good information. With one of our patients, we weren't sure what the problems were. We sent the symptoms, and after discussing with international doctors, we started the procedure. Thank God the patient recovered well and was discharged.
The green-white matter differentiation is maintained. Okay. And as you can see that there is no high density to indicate that there is any bleed, in intracranial or extracranial bleed.
هغه په خارج کې دی هغه ډاکټران چې زمونږ بچی د پاره د په ټلیفون امداد کوي سیدا کوشش کوي هغه نه هم ډیر خوشاله وي دا خو صحیح خبره ده او موږ ته خپل بچی چې خوشي خدا خبره.
Waheed also met with the head of emergency and intensive care services for the whole of Afghanistan. She has a direct line to the health minister, so she's a vital contact.
The feedback of doctors is very good for the telemedicine because most of their problems solve for the patient by that way, and that cooperate with the doctors and very quickly respond for them, and it's good for the health services. The quality of health service improving by telemedicine.
All of this became possible because of Waheed's parents' decision to send him to London in 1999.
He was 15 years old when the fighting got worse. This time it was due to the Taliban. I had a discussion with my friend and told him that my son is very clever and very intelligent. Then my friends helped me and told me that they would send him to a foreign country. They took him to Pakistan, and from there he went abroad.
My son was very smart and he wanted to study, but I did not want to send him anywhere. We had a house which we sold, so we could send him to London. I became very depressed.
So the 15-year-old Waheed arrived in a new land, an asylum seeker, not knowing what the future would hold.
We had one contact in London, and that was a family friend, and that was on Portobello. And then after a week, I found a job for myself, and that turned into 3 jobs. Because that was my primary mission, to be able to support my family members. Always thinking that I had to educate myself as well, now that I've got the opportunities.
The education began in earnest. He taught himself English and science and was soon studying for 5 A-levels at night school. By now he was also looking after his younger brother, who'd come to join him in London. But nothing was going to deter him. Five A grades were good enough to get him an interview for a place at Trinity Hall, Cambridge.
When I came for my interview, I didn't know even how to do my tie. So one of the parents for another student who was there for the interview, I asked him if he could help me with the ties. He helped me with the tie. After a few days, I received a letter, and the letter said, we're very delighted to offer you a place to study medicine at Cambridge University. I think that was one of the happiest days of my life, certainly.
Hi, I'm Dr. Katain Sadat from Kabul, Afghanistan.
Nice to meet you. Do you have a case to discuss today?
Yes, we have one important case that I want to discuss.
Today they had a challenge for us. They discussed a very unusual case, one of those that we see very rarely, and some gynecologists may never see in their career. This is where we learn from our side as well, because such cases, we discuss them among our group of specialists here, or we go back and we look at our literature, and then we give them the best advice that we can. They are also competent clinicians. The problem lies often in lack of resources, and sometimes in lack of experience in some cases that are not that straightforward.
Waheed's network of volunteer consultants and doctors has grown to around 100. He's clearly very persuasive.
He's particularly good at engaging people's attention. So what he does, he tells people about the plight of war-torn countries and the lack of medical facilities. And he's very enthusiastic about getting people involved to the point that he's spread his net quite widely.
He's identified a clinical need. Radiology is completely pivotal to the management of nearly all cases that come into a hospital, particularly in an area where there's severe poverty or a war zone. And it's really complicated stuff, and we all need some help when we're working as a team in any hospital. So it comes as no surprise to me that those working in Afghanistan are looking around for a bit of help when things get complicated.
There are some places where telemedicine is the only line of support for beleaguered doctors. Kunduz in northeast Afghanistan represents the front line of the battle with the Taliban. Here in 2015, a trauma centre was destroyed in error by a US bomb strike, which killed 42 people. In Kunduz, normal rules don't apply.
Sometimes we get a patient who comes in with 20 or more guards, and they threaten the doctors. The doctors are not safe. What we require is emergency help. We receive help from Dr. Aryan's telemedicine team. They assist us to diagnose emergency cases that we are not able to solve due to the lack of the right equipment. We send our examinations to them, and they give us further advice. We thank them from the bottom of our hearts because they help selflessly, and they have helped war-torn Kunduz.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Motaram. Chol awal bakhair hasten?
Waheed is back in London for an important meeting tomorrow morning. But overnight, the calls keep coming in.
والا شفافانه خیرت بود بازم دیروز اونم حادثه انتحاری بسیار جگرخون ما که 5-6 نفر فوتی آوردن 29 نفر زخمی
او شفاخانه شما آوردن
ناراحت کننده بود پلیس در شفاخانه ما آوردن چون نزدیک ما بود نزدیک شفاخانه خب ما فعلا ما مرجع خود دفتن منایس عاجل مرزا را دیدیم و بعد از 15 دقیقه 20 دقیقه پیش ما پس عاجل را بالا روان کردن کل کارشون در بالا عملیاتی بود نیاز به عملیات داشتن
درباره از او هم چیز مشوره اگه باشه کدام نظر باشه ارتوپدیک باشه نیوروسرجری اکیوت و یا هم کریتیکال کیر چیز باشه بر ما گفته میتونن دکتر صاحب.
The next day, he meets the most senior doctor in the UK, Sir Bruce Keogh, the medical director of the National Health Service. He wants to hear more about Waheed's work and what the NHS can learn from it.
Absolute pleasure. So, grab a seat. He brings an enormous simplicity to the approach. And I think there's a lot we can learn from that. And I'm hoping that by bringing together the experiences of other people that have tried similar things around the NHS along with Waheed, that we can catalyse the uptake of this sort of technology for the benefits of our patients. We're getting a glimpse of the future here, and I think what he is doing represents something that's very special. You know, healthcare systems around the world are all constrained by their national boundaries. But the art, the science and the values of medicine know no national boundaries. And if anybody exhibits that, it's Waheed and his work.
You see two connects on the top there. They scan the room, it's just inside out.
The simple everyday communication methods which so impress Sir Bruce are the mainstay of Waheed's work. But he's also keen to push the boundaries. He wanted to try an augmented reality telemedicine call to Afghanistan, something which hadn't been done before. So we teamed him up with the BBC Technology Unit to explore its potential.
What they're seeing is what you're seeing.
So they will be able to see that as well on Skype?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
In a training theatre at Aintree Hospital, Waheed wears an augmented reality headset and uses a mannequin to help illustrate details of a medical procedure. In the headset, he can see the doctors in Kabul, while almost 4,000 miles away, they can see the augmented reality he's conjuring up in his headset.
So I'll take the arrow and we place it along the mouth on this mannequin. Then we have to make sure that the cervical spine or the neck vertebrae, they're intact. We check the patient from head to toe to make sure there are no visible injuries or any broken legs, any open fractures that we need to reduce before we move on. And we also check the temperature of the patient. It went very well. We discussed a medical case, we solved the problem. It was a live medical case in one of the hospitals in Kabul, Afghanistan. And using augmented reality, we discussed it and we managed the problem. And that's the future of telemedicine and teleeducation, to use this technology and to be able to advise and also educate.
Waheed is already working with hospitals in Syria and has plans to expand into Kashmir, Iraq and parts of Africa. He's also working with some sectors of the NHS to help enhance patient care and medical training here in the UK. One casualty is any semblance of a normal family life.
Now I'm doing this charity work from my living room, and I'm on the move 24/7. My mobile phone is with me. I coordinate all the activities in Afghanistan and almost all activities in Syria.
Yes, he is away a lot, and it can be hard and it can be lonely at times. When you're on your own and you're seeing all the other families out and you think, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have my husband home? But on the other side, I know that he's doing amazing things for humanity. He's going to be saving thousands of lives. So I look at the positive and think, I have a great life, and what about the people that would love to have something that we've got?
Shortly after Waheed's visit to Afghanistan, His BBC driver, Mohammed Nazir, was killed in a massive explosion which claimed over 150 lives and injured hundreds more. Waheed and his team were once again called into action, their work providing yet another glimpse of the medical future, brought to Afghanistan by a survivor of its troubled past.
When I see the war-torn areas in Kabul, it brings back the memories of my childhood, and I'm happy that at least I'm able to go back and help. So that's my therapy. One person can't do all this. What we need now is urgent support with technology. We've come a long way in just 2 years, and we're helping in places that have no other support. And this is so important. Lives are at stake. And we can help save those lives, but we cannot do it on our own.